Welcome, everybody. My name is Christina with Atlantic Institute. Today, we have a conversation on the power of the pen, a tribute to writers and creators. And we have with us Ava and three different writers that she's been able to locate to talk with us and share with us what it is like in our tribute here for writers and creators. So go ahead, Ava.
Hey there, guys. My name's Ava, and the way I found the authors that we have here today is through TikTok. So, me putting together this topic for Authors Appreciation Month, what I did was I created a strategy to go on TikTok or any type of social media platform and just typing in like any authors I'll be interested, and then sending out the emails, and then whoever was interested, nice. So, the way this will work is since I have three authors on the event with me, who will go first is Caroline, and then next will be Micaiah, and then lastly, but not least, will be Maya.
That sounds great. So, and you're going to ask me questions, aren't you? Because it makes it a
Yes.
lot easier. I'm Caroline Montague. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Caroline. So to start off, where are you from?
I'm from England. Actually, I live in Gloucestershire in the Cotswolds. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it's a very beautiful part of England. So, but I'm in London recording this now.
And it's you said about like 9 p.m. It's over there, right?
Yeah, it is about
Oh my
9.
gosh.
Yeah, it's about 9:10. So,
Oh my
yeah,
goodness.
very, very different time zone. So I'm sitting with the dog in my lap because she wouldn't get out. So it's really nice to be here.
It's very nice to have you on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, time for questions. I have 7 questions I'll ask each speaker with the same type of format. So the first question that I have lined up is what inspired you to start writing and how did you develop your voice as a writer?
Okay, so I didn't want to, well, when I was about age 4, my father decided that I should write him a poem for his birthday. So instead of buying some tacky little present, because you don't have any money when you're 4, he wanted me to write a poem. Anyway, and at 4, I was really did not want to do this, but I did it for him. And gradually, every year, my poems got slightly more sophisticated. And I gave them to him for his birthday. And by the age of 10, I won a national poetry competition. So
Oh,
to any little girl, that is exactly it is, it's amazing. And you think, oh my God, I might be good at this. And from the age of 10, I knew that one day I'd be a writer. And yeah, it's sort of life got in the way, and it took me a long time before I had children, and then I had stepchildren, and I couldn't. But then one day I just knew I've got to do it. And I sat down and I had a brilliant idea, because of course you need a brilliant idea.
yeah, of course.
And I wrote my first book. So yeah, that's sort of how it happened for me. And to find my voice, I with Burnt Norton, it did really well. And then I actually changed publishers to Orion, because it's a very big publisher in England. And they changed my name from Caroline Sandon. So if anyone wants to read my first book, Burnt Norton, it's under the name Caroline Sandon. My next publisher, Orion Fiction, changed me to Caroline Montague. And it was there that I think I really found my voice and decided I needed to write about strong women, because I love strong women. And we haven't had a voice over the centuries, and we need a voice, and we still need a voice. And so that
Yeah.
is what has driven, I think, every single one of my books has got a very strong female lead. So that's what drove me on, and still does.
That's good. Very bright inspiration for everybody who's discovered your books for sure. And for your first book that you published, when did you publish it and what was the name of it?
That was called Burnt Norton, and that was under the name of Caroline Sandon. And Bella Carter, who's on this call, who does all my PR, she's reading it at the moment, and she said, Caroline, why do you never talk about this book? I just love it. I love it. I love it. So I thought I'd bring it in tonight. And it was my first book, and it has a strong female lead, but it's more a family saga of a house burning down, and a woman in distress and who gets pregnant, and it was a great, yeah, it was a great story, and I want to bring it to life again, actually, because people, when they read it, say, wow, I love this book. So that was, and then, as I say, I changed publisher and went to Orion, and they changed my name to Caroline Montague.
Wow. Would you ever consider publishing a book one day, or
What do you mean, self-publishing?
yeah, self-publishing, I mean.
Some of the questions Ava has are all the same, and so it's just a little bit of an adjustment. But
Yeah. So would I ever consider self-publishing? The answer is I'm not brave enough, I don't think. I think, I admire so many people have had total bestsellers because they become a TikTok storm, which interestingly, Bella seems to be making me a bit, but not, I still don't think I'm brave enough to self-publish. And because you self-publish, don't you?
Yeah,
And
I would say I definitely self-publish when it comes to finding speakers for my events. But it also can get very nerve-wracking because it's all about like having the confidence to do it also. And
I
that can be
think
pretty scary.
I think it's very scary, and I think it's incredibly courageous. And maybe one day I will, but at this moment in time, I like having a publisher because they get it out there. Not that my publishers did a massively good job at that, I might add, but hey ho, that's another story. But it's in their hands, and I have to write the book, which takes everything out of me. And once I've done the book, then I hand it over. And also I've got my wonderful Bella who does my PR, and she does that bit of work for me. So I just like the writing. I love writing. I love getting hold of a story and running with it. So that's my part. So self-publishing, sure.
And then Caroline, when you're writing a book, how long would you say it takes to like officially finish writing a book?
Okay, so my publisher gives me 6 months to write it, which is not long enough. And then another 6 months, because then they're editors. I must tell you, when I first wrote, because if anyone's wanting to write their book who's on this chat and doesn't know about it, this will be illuminating. Excuse me. When I first wrote Burnt Norton and I handed it in, I thought, this is it. I'm going to be on the shelves in 2 weeks' time. They'll take it and they'll publish it. And I said to the head of Zeus, I was with then, this is so exciting. When does it come out? Next month. And she said, Caroline, you need to sit down and slow down and calm down, because there are about 5 different processes now before it gets to the shelves. First, we will send you we will take your manuscript, we will rip it apart and do a whole set of edits. And because it was my first book, actually, they sent me 2 sets of edits. So I did the first edit, and then they weren't happy with that, so I did another edit. And then edit is where they put comments in the margins, where you have a word program and they put comments in the margins.
Oh.
What color is this hair? That wouldn't have happened in 1870. You're wrong. So you have to adjust, and too much word, too many adjectives. So all the way through your manuscript, you have to do it in the format that your publisher wants it to be. And one editor, cut my first 4 chapters.
Oh, really? Why?
Because she said, Caroline, I had the first and then the next 3, because she said, you've got to capture your reader. It was this book, An Italian Affair. And she said, you've got to capture your reader in the first 2 chapters. If you don't, they'll put the book down, they'll walk away, and that's that. And my second, third, and fourth chapter apparently weren't fast-paced enough, weren't anything. And she said, I want you to chop them. So I had to chop them and go from the chapter 4 and then do the bits I chopped in backstory so that you knew what had happened, but in about a couple of chapters. Anyway, after you've finished your edits and they've been signed off, it then goes to a copy editor who fact checks. It then goes to a proofreader who checks your all your spelling and your punctuation, of which mine is pretty bad. and then it goes to a final editor, and then it goes to print setting, typesetting, and only then, 6 months later, does your proof come out, your first proof. So
Wow.
it's usually six
That's such a
months of
process.
doing all that kind of stuff. So if anyone is interested, it is not just write a book and put it out there. If you're
Oh yeah,
with
definitely not.
no, and nobody does, and it's hard work. Excuse me.
To be honest, I never realized that writing a book could be a lot because I just think of, okay, you come up with the ideas, right? And then, you write them down and then you have your like final copy where you put all the scripts and stuff that you want in your book and then you just put it out there. But then I never realized that it has to go through people who make comments on what should be changed and what can stay and what's good and what's
Well,
not good.
of course, and if you're self-publishing, you can publish what the hell you like.
Yeah.
Frankly, it won't go through unless you want it to. A lot of self-published people, I believe, hire their editor. But I have to give a huge amount of royalties to my publisher so that they do they take a huge cut of everything they sell, and they do all the work, the editing work. But I suppose if you're self-publishing, I don't know, we'll have to hear from the other authors. The process isn't as tortuous, I wouldn't have thought, possibly, I don't know. But there have been these massive, Bella was telling me yesterday, there have been these massive million copies sold of self-publishing now because of BookTok. BookTok has been incredible for authors. And so you don't have to be, if Bella thinks she can sell me 1 million books on TikTok, maybe we'll just go. We shall see. So, there it is.
Very hard process to publish a book, I see. Okay, next question. Probably gonna skip this question. Have you ever experienced like a writer's block before?
Oh God, yes. Oh my God.
And
You
how's it
can't,
like?
you can't, oh, you can't be a writer without, because I think any writer is probably quite sensitive, and we need encouragement, and we need your friends. I've got a friend on here, Sally Carter, who's reading my book I'm writing at the moment, and her encouragement means the world to me, because otherwise I'll stop one day and think, I can't do this. It's rubbish. It's totally awful, blah, blah, blah. And I can't, and I'm stuck. And actually, a wonderful comment from Sally will get me going again, but also a walk in the woods, getting away from it. Just thinking, it's Caroline, just move on. You don't like that chapter, move on and come back to it when you can do it. And that's what I do. But yeah, I get writer's block all the time. Funnily enough, I've just finished one bit of the book, an area of the book. And I'm now thinking, oh God, I got to write the next bit. And what am I going to write? So, but and I know, and everyone knows, you have got to keep your reader going from the moment they get into your book to the last page. So you can't, I always have learnt from my editors is that you've got to, you have sort of curves. So you've got to keep coming to a point of excitement, and then you can let it down a minute, and then you need another one, so that all the time you have got to keep your reader gripped, otherwise they'll discard it. I bet you've discarded books, haven't you, in the past?
I
We
feel
all,
like it's all about keeping the audiences more curious on the
yeah.
book.
What's going to happen? You've got to have a few secrets or things to be discovered. You've got to have, what the hell's going to happen now? Is he going to fall in love with her? Isn't he going to fall in love?
Yeah, have them question, wait, what's gonna happen next?
Well, yeah, is frankly, are they going to, have it up?
Right.
I have a friend in Western North Carolina that's published a couple of books. I think she might have self-published because she's tried to go with different publishers and they messed things up, and I guess there's issues sometimes with certain publishers and things. And so but she has often posted on Facebook, like sometimes she needs to write, but she needs to just get away for the weekend. And she'll just go
Yeah.
get an Airbnb for a weekend, and she'll go walk in the river, and she'll go sit in the woods,
Yeah.
and like just clear her mind, and then she can sit down, and then she'll just let her body, let herself write where she needs to write, and let it
It's
flow.
so true. Yeah. I mean, if I push myself too hard when I've got block, then I'll mess up.
Right.
So I just exactly, my biggest freedom is going for a walk with the dogs, and just forgetting about it. I mean, sometimes I listen to my, if I listen to something on YouTube or something. And at the moment, my next book is set in the French Revolution, and it's really quite exciting. And I listen to, but the French Revolution is so complicated. And even though you will only get a smattering of the revolution in the book, I have to know about it. So for any aspiring writer, research to me is so important. And so I am learning at the moment as we speak about the French Revolution. So yeah, so that's another thing. I get away from it and I listen to something. So yeah, writer's block is very prevalent in our
Ooh, it sounds
lives.
stressful too on top of it. Can't imagine.
Yeah, it is. You think because we all think, oh, I can't do this. I'm hopeless. I'm useless. And it needs your friends to encourage you that actually this is wonderful. What are you talking about, you stupid woman? Get on with it.
Yeah, it's like when you feel like you're not doing your best and then you have the support from your friends and family, like, giving you the
Oh,
support, it's good, then you feel a lot better about it.
yeah, 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 yeah. Absolutely. A million times.
Definitely. Okay, next question. What comes first to you, characters, plot, or theme? And how do you develop these elements as you write?
I love this question because plot, characters, or place. So in my last book, this one, The Pieces of Us, it was actually neither the plot nor the character, it was the place. And I wanted to write about the Staffordshire potteries. I don't suppose you get the pottery throwdown in the States. I don't know if you do or not, but pottery making is really, really popular in the UK at this moment in time.
It's popular in the South. I don't know about North,
Is it?
but
Is
I
it?
know like South
Interesting.
Carolina, Georgia,
Is it?
like it's a
It's a thing.
yeah, it's an earthy mountain type of
Yeah,
where they make
really
mugs
wonderful.
and stuff like that.
Well,
Yes.
funnily enough, my heroine goes to the States in the end because I think she might go to Georgia. I can't remember. Anyway, and I knew I wanted to know more about Staffordshire because my husband inherited a house in Staffordshire near the potteries, and it was important to me that I knew the area. And I went and discovered the potteries, and it was just extraordinary. And then I thought, right, so we've got place. Now we need character. So I chose this very feisty, strong young woman who has been, her parents died in the First World War, and she is adopted by her godfather, who is he is Lord Derrington, and he owns one of the potteries. And her mother died of something called lead poisoning, which was very prevalent in the potteries because the paintresses, all women, licked their brushes and died of lead poisoning. Her mother was one of them. So Elodie Cole, who's my heroine, she decides to take on the pottery owners to try and make it more safe for these young women. And of course, she is now living with the pottery owner. And she falls in love with the son, and it's a huge love story. So in that novel, place came first, character came second. And what was the third one? Place, character,
Plot.
Plot.
plot. Plot sort of was developed. My publisher is always telling me I've got to write a synopsis about everything. And I did write a synopsis, but actually the plot grew from my characters and changed. I wrote a synopsis and it changed so much because sometimes your characters become so strong. So basically, obviously, the place is not the strongest by any manner of means, but it can be a reason to write a book. And then your character can be so important, and she can drive your plot and change your plot, which is what Elodie Cole did. So I'm not sure whether that answers your question adequately,
It
but
does. I would say it does. Oh, actually, I did have another question though. Would you
go
say
on.
like the plot grew more when the two characters like fell in love?
Yeah, definitely, because it drives where it's going. And of course, they've got to have a massive breakup. Of course, there's got to be tragedy. In all my stories, there's a massive amount of tragedy and love, because that's what readers like, isn't it? They like love, they like, and I do try to give everyone a happy ending because I think it's more satisfying, or redemption or something that is satisfying at the end of the story.
For sure. I feel like when a lot of readers read books, they kind of look into like, okay, if it's like a love story, what's gonna happen? I think topics like that gets the readers, well, yeah, the readers and the audiences more like interested in like, okay,
Engaged.
what's gonna happen? And we're
Oh,
excited
yeah.
to read the book.
Well, the book I'm writing at the moment, she absolutely, well, in a lot of books, obviously, they loathe the person. In this one, Mia loathes the man she ultimately falls massively in love with, because it's much more fun, isn't it, to have the transition from loathing to love. And
Yeah.
in the book that I'm writing at the moment, she's forced, and it's true, based on a true story. This girl is forced into a marriage with a man older than herself, and she's kicking and screaming to the church. And of course, she tells him she loathes him and never will, she'll never be with him. And so this guy who's married her says, okay, I accept what you're saying. And of course, she falls madly in love with him. And then you've got the problem of, oh God, how do I tell him? And I told him he repulses me, then I'm now madly in love with him. So you've got to have something like that.
Yeah. Well,
So
that was very interesting. And that's all the questions I have. It was really nice to meet you and hear about your experiences as an author, and
it's
especially your books that you're publishing.
it's such a pleasure. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. And if you would like to stay on, you're welcome to stay.
I will do, certainly. Thank you, Ava, so much.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Bye-bye.
Okay, next up we have Micaiah. Sorry. Hey, Micaiah.
Hi, everybody. My name's Micaiah. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan in the States, and now I'm in California.
Awesome, awesome. So, first question I have for you: what inspired you to write your first children's book?
Well, context, I'm a children's book author, so I have a very, very different experience. I'm also self-published. My first book I actually wrote, which is right here, Micaiah's Show and Tell. I actually wrote as a part of a class project for college. We were just supposed to do something that could impact our community, and it could have been whatever. People did stickers and they gave them away to kids. People did all kinds of things. And for a long time, I wanted to be a writer. I just never really knew like when. And I felt like if I kept asking myself when, then I never really was going to do it. So it's like, what better time than, oops, I'm sorry, what better time than to do it when it's carved out in my schedule? And that's when I did my first book.
Oh wow, it sounds good. And I see in the back you have awards, right? Or is that
Oh, these are my degrees.
Oh.
Yeah. So I wrote this first book when I was a student at the University of Michigan, 2 years ago. And then I wrote my second book more recently, earlier in this year, after I'd already graduated, but I got my master's in elementary education. So
Oh, that's
I was going to ask
nice.
you what your
very
degree.
aligned. Yeah, my undergrad degree is in African American Studies, and then my master's in elementary education.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Would you say like, okay, so when you started doing like children's book as an author that you are, would you say it was like easy at first or difficult?
I think it was a challenge. I don't come from a family who wrote any books. I didn't know anybody who wrote any books. It was very, very new to me. And I didn't like, I tell everybody I started bare bones. Like, I didn't know the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing. And like I said, I didn't have anybody that I was looking up to, like, oh, this person wrote a book, let me get some advice from them. It wasn't that at all. So when I was like, I want to write a book, I meant I'm just going to write a book.
And
And
you wrote some books,
so
so that's
yeah,
good.
exactly. I went on Google and I literally typed in, how do I write a book? And I figured out like all the ins and outs, I guess you could say, when it comes to self-publishing. I guess the process that many people do. Because I would say that, when people think about writing the book, I think they think there's like a concrete way that you have to write your book. You have to do this first and this next. And I mean, if you're traditional publishing, I mean, there is some sort of, I think, carved out way that you probably should do it based on what they're asking of you. But in my situation, I did things probably backwards. I wrote some pieces of the book, and then I would go back to the drawing board, and then I would write more. In my second book, I wrote it completely different than I wrote the first one. And my books are both based on me. So it really didn't like, I didn't go through a process where I was thinking about, oh, should I do this differently for curiosity? Like I hear you guys saying, it's so interesting how like different of a perspective we have when it came to writing books, because I was literally retelling a story in both of my books. And so for the most part, I wrote them in very, very short periods of time because I sat and I thought on the idea for a really long time, and I didn't start writing until I was ready to start writing, until all those ideas kind of came to fruition.
Ah, definitely a process, I can tell.
It definitely it was different, and like I said, I the second one is completely different than the first one in the writing process. So I think I learned along the way.
I feel like when people are reading an author's book, they like to read something that's kind of like the same type of format, but just a little bit different. Not always the same, because I feel that maybe if like readers are reading a book and it always sounds the same, it can get boring kind of. So it's more about, okay, when you're creating something, do you ever think about like not to repeat the same storyline you did for the first book, or?
Times I think sometimes in the writing process things can come off as repetitive, and that's kind of just when I go back and review it and have other people review it as well. But when it comes to children's books, my books are kind of like along the same theme. They have the same sort of theme about confidence, and they just go about telling the story differently. So Micaiah's Show and Tell is about me when I was in about first grade, and I do a show and tell presentation about my natural hair because I couldn't think of what I should do a show and tell about. And I'm like, well, this is unique to me. This is important to me. So I actually did it about my hair. I did it about beads, barrettes, and things like that.
Wow, I've never seen anybody do that before. And like for show and tell, like for me, like when I was in elementary school, people would bring like toys and stuff. But the fact that you did about your hair and like giving people like facts, that's really cool. I've never seen that before.
I mean, I thought too, like, what kind of book would I have wanted when I was that age? And those type of books were just not around. Like, we love fiction books. I still love a good fiction book, but I think I
They are
could
good.
they are, but I definitely could have benefited from hearing something a little bit on the truthful side so that I could feel like I wasn't so isolated from everybody else. And I think me talking about my hair in my book was my way of being like, you know what? I'm not ashamed of this part of myself. This part of myself makes me happy and excited. And then I got even more excited when I realized that my classmates were like enjoying it as well and like learning from it as well. And the second book is a little bit later on in elementary, about fourth grade. And I'm running for class president. And I'm once again lacking confidence in the area of like, should I do? I don't think I'm qualified. And then my mom comes in and she gives me a little bit of confidence, and she shows me all of these people who have done things for the first time and was like, oh, you know what? I think I can do this. So they're both of them are kind of along the same lines, but I think because they're in different spaces, that it's easier for children to like not get bored because first of all, they're for different age groups, but they also just tell a different story. So that I think they can reach a different audience when it comes to like what they're actually going through in that period of time in their life.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then I feel that when you're making books, of course, it's more about, okay, let's see, what should I put next? Or what should I do for this chapter or this story plot line? And then for like your covers, do you draw your covers or?
I am not artistic whatsoever, okay? Funny story, both
Hi,
of
what is your
these
name,
books were
Maya?
illustrated by students that weren't even in my class. That's the funny part. Like in college, I had met a student who was in my class, and she was roommates to a girl who was into art, and she just gave me her contact information. I reached out to her. I said, hey, this might enhance your portfolio. We worked together and we worked on these books together. And so she did all of my art for both of the books, and now we're both graduated, and she did the art for this one after she had graduated. And she actually does this full time now. So we were young and working together, both putting out our first kind of pieces. So I think that's always like and they're both in my acknowledgments for both of the books in the back of the book. So it's just a really cool point that I like to bring out when people ask me about the artwork, because no, I did not draw it and I will not take credit for that.
But hey, after all, teamwork makes the dream work. So with your effort and her effort, it really made a big like impact on both of you guys.
Absolutely.
But that's nice. Like the covers look good, and then especially for younger people that they can read it, and then sort of if they feel like they can relate to it, it'd be more of like, okay, I feel humbled reading this book because I can relate to something that I'm not very confident showing off this. But this author, they talk about what they want to show off for show and tell, and it makes them probably think, you know what, maybe I should step out of my comfort zone too, and just broad out myself and just explore how I am and stuff, and then just have people see how I really am.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, when I wrote the first book, I started going on book tour. So like I said, I self-published, so I had to think through everything like on my own. How am I supposed to market this book? How am I supposed to get this in the hands of kids? And I didn't know where to start. So in my college town, I just emailed a whole bunch of principals at the elementary schools and I was like, hey guys, I have a book. I would love to come to your school and read the book. And then it ended up kind of turning into a business while I was a student. And I literally was going around elementary schools in between classes and doing full-on assemblies with my book. And I would talk to the kids about identity. And it's funny because it's so funny when you are writing a book and I think your goals and intentions as to like the impact of it is one thing, and then what actually happens afterwards can be something completely different. I think that's like the beauty of writing, because when I started writing my book, I obviously like the front cover is a dark-skinned Black girl. I was like, I want dark-skinned Black girls to see themselves in my books. Like that is what I want to do because that's what I wanted for myself. And then when I went to these schools, and there's obviously like, it's not just dark-skinned Black girls at these assemblies. And everybody was engaging with it, like with the same passion. And I thought that was so cool and exciting because I think everybody found a way to find themselves in the book. So maybe they didn't have curly hair, maybe they didn't wear beads, but they were finding a way to feel confident in the story that I was telling. And I think that was the most empowering part about like writing my first book. And it's the reason that I wrote the second one, because I feel like the impact just reached like so many more kids than I even thought it was going to. And I think that kind of drives my passion for wanting to keep writing.
I love that you,
Very impressed.
yeah, I love that you did that. My brother is my youngest brother is a dark-skinned Puerto Rican, and he when he was a teenager, he started his own videography business. And he was the hero in all of the films that he's created, only because he always loved Spider-Man and he liked Marvel. He was a very big Marvel fan. And so he loved Spider-Man, but he said there's no Puerto Rican people as the heroes. So he always cast himself in that hero role so that other people that were Puerto Rican could see, there's kids that are watching this, and he was like, that way you can see me. You can see a Puerto Rican figure up there. And I was like, yeah, because that's very important. That identity is very important.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then I feel that when it comes to books, people I think would like to read a book and be like, you know what, I feel good about reading this because it's interesting. I can somewhat relate to it. And then also just have a talk about the book with other people and have good conversations about the book that you're reading.
Absolutely. I think my books have definitely been a conversation starter for me. When people see it or they hear about it, they ask, like, what inspired you? And I'm like, funny story, this is about me. I mean, if you didn't get the hint from the title, it's literally about me. I went through it, I experienced it. So it's just I get to share those real life stories that actually affected my life that I know are continuing to impact young kids' lives today. So at least they can be able to read a book and be like, oh, this is a way that I can, be able to articulate and communicate what I'm experiencing, and I don't have to feel like this is something I'm ashamed of.
Yeah, and especially just like putting your thoughts out there and not keeping them like in psych and actually write about it.
Absolutely.
That's really nice. Okay, next question. Do you outline your books or do you prefer to discover the story as you go along?
Well, I don't outline them just because, like I said, I feel like my books are short, first of all, about 30 pages since they're for young children. So there's not a whole lot of writing, honestly. Like if you want, I tell everybody this is a secret. When I wrote my first book, I wrote it in like 5 days. Like in one sitting, like in 5 days. And it's because I like to marinate on it in my head. And then once it's marinated, it's done and I put it on paper. Like I already know the scenes, I already know how I'm going to spell them out. I don't actually like to sit behind the computer or behind pen and paper and like sit on it because then I don't know, it just feels more organic to me when I can think about it and like actually think back to how it happened. And some of the parts of the book aren't exactly how it happened, and that's just for the sake of like making it more exciting. But I just sit on it. I sit on the idea and I remember how it happened, and I think, how would I have reacted had I been my 6-year-old self right now? So I think through all of that, and then I get behind the computer and I make it happen right then and there. And
Wow.
then I get it edited and everything like that afterwards. But I definitely don't sit behind writing. And I think I have the privilege to be able to do that because my books are about 30 pages. And had it been longer, I don't know that I would do that. But because they're shorter, I think I can still make that happen.
Yeah, especially having the patience to do like 30 pages. But wow, that was very interesting to hear about your story. And then you writing children's books, especially like inspiring other children for them to read it too. That's really cool. If I was younger and I saw your book, I would definitely read it as like a young child.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're
I
welcome.
definitely think to that a lot. I'm like, times are changed. Like, I don't know if people are reading books like that anymore. And if they are they reading these kinds of books? I don't know. It's kind of hard to gauge kids now. So I definitely have that imposter syndrome sometimes. Like, is this good quality? Is this what people want to read? Is this something that somebody would buy their child? Is this something that I should be proud of? I definitely have those moments. I feel like, are you a writer if you don't have those moments where you're questioning your capabilities, or you're questioning how well the work you're putting out is? But I think I've definitely come to the point where I can feel confident that, you know what, if I was mom, I would buy this for my daughter, even if I didn't write it.
I feel like after all, confidence is key. So definitely have the confidence up and then you're definitely set.
Absolutely. I agree.
Well, it was very nice having you on. Loved hearing your stories. If you would like, you can still stay on.
Of course. Thank you. And I'll put the links to both of the books in the chat.
Of course, you could do that. Thank you.
You can. I stuck the Amazon links in there, but if you have other links.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, we have Maya. Hey, Maya.
Hi, I'm Maya. I live in upstate South Carolina, where I'm actually in the creative writing program at this high school for the arts, which is so crazy and so cool. And I've been writing since I was really little. It's always been a huge part of my life, so I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So what age would you say you started writing books?
I started writing like short stories when I was around 5 because I would see these stories in like the TV shows I watched and the books my parents read me every night, and I wanted to tell them as I would have told them. And as I continued doing that and as I grew older, I started having like more original ideas about characters that I invented or that had been inspired by things that I had experienced that day. And eventually I started writing poetry, and I was in my novel era for a while there where I kept trying to write novels, but now I'm mostly focused on shorter fiction, which is good for my sanity because I can actually finish it and make it really high quality without losing my mind.
You
Definitely did.
You made Caroline chuckle. She can relate.
I saw.
Yep, yep.
I'm happy to hear that.
So Maya, when you're writing, can you walk us through like your writing process and how you develop your stories and what you do, especially for poetry?
Sure. I keep this like Google document where I just write down like little lines that occur to me or character ideas or story ideas that I have. And oftentimes when I like need inspiration, I will look to that. Other times I'll get some form of like direction or inspiration in the class that I am currently in. For me, I don't really outline my stuff. I need like the momentum of a first line to get started. And then I often find that like the key conflict of the piece that I'm working on and what the characters are like can come from that. And with poetry and short fiction, it's basically the same process, although obviously there are different things to consider in both of them. Like with short fiction, you have to think about your prose style and you have to think about the plot. But with poetry, it's more about the lineation and more about the imagery.
Okay, okay, nice. And then for poetry, would you say like when you first started doing poetry, was it hard for you to like come up with like phrases to write down and create?
You know, actually, my main memory of when I started writing poetry was not wanting to be considered like a poet, so I didn't really want to write poetry. I had not had the privilege of being exposed to a lot of poetry that resonated with me at that point. So I thought poets just had nothing to say but insisted upon saying something. So I think that was a bigger concern for me at the time than coming up with ideas. Although now in my life, yeah, I definitely do sometimes have issues coming up with images, but it is for sure worth it to have a really interesting and fresh like simile or metaphor.
Okay, okay. And then for poetry, do you go more for like rhyming or just like being creative with it?
I really like free verse poetry and I like prose poetry, so it's kind of like formatted in paragraph form and like the tone that you're writing in tells you that it's like a poem. Although right now in my poetry class, we're talking about like poetic forms. So I've been writing to those. We actually have an assignment coming up where we have to write like a sestina or a guzzle or a pantium or a golden shovel or I think like one other poetic form. So I have been experimenting with those. I feel like it's been a while since I wrote in rhyme just because I haven't really approached a project where I felt like the rhyme scheme would benefit the work.
Mm. And then I bet like when since you have to do like more of like rhyming you mentioned in your assignment, it's probably like maybe a little bit more difficult to come up with like some ideas and words you can use, right?
Yes, a lot of the forms that we're looking at right now have like repeated lines or repeated language,
Yeah.
and it can be difficult to like try to say the same thing twice and have it mean something different every time.
Yeah, that's like with
Yeah.
words, how
Yes.
words can like sound the same, but can have like different meanings, of course.
Yeah, that's absolutely something that I think you want to look at if you're looking at what my teacher calls an obsessive form or a form that heavily uses repetition. Because like if you have this ambiguous language, then you can kind of transform it as you're writing, which is really cool, but kind of difficult.
Oh yeah. And when you grow up, like for career wise, would you still consider doing like writing wise or would you like drive towards something different?
I definitely want to keep writing in some form. Obviously, I'm going to need a day job, but it's always been a goal of mine to like publish my work and try to get it out there to an audience where it will resonate with them. And recently I've also been thinking about like screenwriting, so writing like a TV show or a movie. So that's also a potential option that I could pursue. But yes, writing is 1000% a part of my career plans.
That's cool. I feel like writing, it can be fun. It's like you are your own person. You are your own idea thinker, robot, I like to call it. So it's like when you're thinking about ideas, you have the ability to like drive it through your brain and then write it down on paper.
Yes, that's what I really like about writing too. Like, there are no rules. You can just do whatever you like. And it is so much fun to have that creative freedom.
Definitely, definitely. And do you have like any like creative like writing pieces that you've done that you've wrote so far?
Yeah, since I've been taking these creative writing classes, I have revised quite a few like short fiction pieces, creative nonfiction essays, and poems. And I've also gotten to read them at readings. And I would say those are the only pieces I've ever like finished, unless you count my previous poetry classes that I've done with a poet who lives in my area. This has
Okay,
been
that's nice.
my real first experience with the revision process, which has been so educational because I never really had that before. And it's definitely changed the way I write.
Mm. And then when you're writing, like once you finish your pieces, do you let's say this, do you do like public speaking where you like go to like a location and you read out your poetry writing or anything like that?
At my school, all of the creative writers have to read some of their work at this local bookstore downtown, like once every school year. And then we have 2 readings on campus in December and in May. And there are sometimes other opportunities to read outside of that too. Like last year, I got to read at this festival for the arts that happens where I live every year, which was super cool. And then this year, I got to read for some prospective students who were considering applying to go to my school, which was really cool. So it just depends on what is offered.
Okay, okay. Let's see. Next question. This one's more of like a, I guess not a personal one, but it's more of like what themes or messages do you hope that our readers take away from what you write?
That's such a cool, interesting question to think about, Ava. So for me, I try not to write too much about the same theme over and over again. Although these ideas that I keep coming back to in my poems are ideas of like human connection, like the simple relationships between 2 people. So I would really say that what I want readers to take away from an individual piece of mine can definitely change. But I think at the core of it, I'm always trying to say something interesting about my characters or about reality. So I guess I want my readers to finish a piece of mine and come out of that thinking about some like philosophical concept or question.
Mm, okay, okay. And then when you're like reading out your poetry and your creative writings, has anyone ever asked you any like crazy questions or like anything like I don't
I can't
know?
I can't say I have ever had that experience. But honestly, I kind of hope so that I do someday because I think number one, I could write about it. Number two, I could talk about it endlessly.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
Thank you very
and
much, Maya.
what?
I said thank you very much for being on here.
Oh, no problem. I'm happy to
we
be
have-
here. Thank you guys for
it
throwing
was
this
so nice
together.
having you.
Yeah, we have 3 different
Thank
types of
you.
writers, and so I think Ava did great finding 3 different types of writers.
It was hard, but I pulled through.
Yep. So does anybody have any questions? Even writer for writer, like anybody have any questions that they might want to ask, or if anybody would like to ask one of the writers a question? I had one, Bella, I was wondering if maybe you could explain for some of us to know what the difference is between what self-publishing is and what maybe having a publisher is. For some people that might not know that there's a difference for some authors, that there's ones, I don't know what you call the other one. I think, but having a being represented, versus a self-publishing.
Did you mean Caroline?
Yeah, well, like there are some people, yeah, that would like Caroline is published, has a publisher, right?
Mm.
And then like Makia like self-publishes. So can you like explain like the difference? Would you be able to explain like what the difference
Oh,
are?
I'm actually not sure. Oh, Caroline, you're on mute.
You're on mute. Or
Caroline, you're
I
on
didn't know
mute.
if Caroline would be better to
I'm
explain.
actually not sure, but yeah, Caroline would be able to explain.
So the difference between a published author by a publishing company and a self-published author is that the self-published, you can actually write your book. And by the way, Makia, honestly, I don't know if it's available in England, but it sounds enchanting. I love the sound of it. But with self-publishing, you write your book and you get it on Amazon and you do all the legwork, and Amazon will publish it for you. And they will, I think you have to pay Amazon to do it, but you get all the royalties afterwards. I mean, I sat next to, just very briefly, and I can't remember what the hell the series was, But I sat next to this guy at a dinner once, and he asked me who my publisher was, and I said I was with my, Orion. And he said, "Oh, I was with them once, and I decided to go self-publishing." And I thought, "Oh, okay." Anyway, he did okay, published, self-published. He has sold millions and millions and millions of copies of this thing, and he is now so famous, and I can't remember his name, which is pretty hopeless. But, and that is, so self-publishing, you can do so well. It's just you have to do more legwork, really, because it is your baby. You are not taken on under the umbrella of a publishing house. And that is the difference.
How do people avoid, like, maybe I don't know about in the UK how it is, or I mean, how do people, like, here in the US, maybe Makia might know, like, how do people avoid some of those scams that those places that say, oh, we'll publish your book and then it costs you $10 a book to have it published, or
Oh,
something like that, where it's like, I just recall that a couple years ago.
well, you get Amazon to do it. They're the best.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right
you
now,
You can
nowadays.
self-publish on Amazon, that's an option. But there's also, now that I think self-publishing is more popular, not more popular than traditional, but just more popular in general, there are self-publishing companies. So I didn't self-publish through Amazon. I self-published through a company called BookBaby, and they get it on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and every other place that you can buy books. So I think you just have to heavy research like I did and spend a little bit of time making sure that there are other, like, look up the other books that are being published by that company, and or you can just avoid it all and go on Amazon directly.
Yeah, because I believe now Amazon is becoming a power horse in this. Like, they really are taking on to where I could go on there and I can create a coloring book and
Oh,
put it
yeah.
on a digital coloring book, and people can print it out and I can get paid for it. I'm shocked that I can actually do that.
Amazon.
And
Amazon's
people tell me
crazy.
I should, because I do stuff with diverse people, that I should do like a diverse, like a diversity kind of coloring book for kids. And I was like, oh, I don't need anything else to do, but
Right.
like that is true. I was like, that is true. I mean, there's something I could do educational wise where kids can learn about other cultures, and I was like, oh, I was like, yeah, very interesting. And Amazon does seem to be the leader here lately in people being able to do those things. But I just know that years ago there was people who used to warn against,
Very big book thing.
there's like, that might cost you $10 a book to have something done, and they're going to charge 15 and keep, so much of it or something. But I remember there being some issues people had years ago.
Oh, wait, with Amazon or
No, it was with other places, like, but I think Makia was
Oh.
right. She was like, look at what other books, some of the self-publishing places have done for people, because that does help.
Definitely,
And-
so that you don't run into scams, because I know when you're trying to invest into something, especially with like money, you want to make sure that you're putting your money towards like a good cause for who's going to handle the rest and not run into problems, because I've seen a lot of scams where people will think they're trusting the right thing and then it like turns like straight upside down.
Yeah, right. All right. Anybody else have any questions for any of the authors, any of the writers? Well, I want to tell you guys thank you. I mean, I know it's 10 o'clock where you guys are at. It's early enough in the day, Makia, over where you're at. It's fine. Still, probably go have lunch now. No. We're gonna start losing daylight. Maya and I are gonna start losing daylight over here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So, thank you guys for.
Thank you guys so much.
We have all the links in the we have all the links in the comments. I know my daughter looked up, she's been sitting over here. Her name is Marina. She liked that, Caroline, that one of your characters she saw was also named Marina.
Oh,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah,
I think-
really.
Aw.
She looked up both of you guys on
Goodreads.
Goodreads to see, and I think on Kindle, did you say was something?
No, it's
No, was it both on Goodreads? Okay, just to see that both of your books not on there. So I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Thank
Great
you
pleasure.
for putting
Thank
this
you.
together. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Put this all together. Maya, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the school. The governor's, you're at the governor's school, correct? Right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
for those that don't know, in South Carolina, they have the governor's school for arts And so they're boarding schools, and each school has a different unique art that a student is interested in.
Well,
Go ahead.
there, okay. So South Carolina has 3 governor schools. We have governor school for agriculture and farming, I think. We have governor school for science and mathematics. And we have governor school for the arts and humanities, which encapsulates like all the arts. There are various programs here. There's like music, drama, visual arts. Did I already say music? I think I did.
Yes, yeah,
Well,
music.
Yeah. So they're separate programs within like the same school, and yes, they are boarding schools.
Yes, and they've done a great job in South Carolina to have students that live. I have a friend that their daughter goes to the one that's an agricultural school. She's learned how to drive every piece of agricultural equipment. She loves it. I have another friend, their daughter goes to the one in Columbia that is the one for science and math, and she's like a scientific whiz when it comes to things, and she's like 16, 17. And then we have Maya that goes to the one over there, and she does writing and all the other different arts things. So they become valuable schools there in South Carolina. And you have to compete to get in. You
Oh,
can't just
really? So how
pay
was
and get in.
competing like for you, Maya? Was it like hard to
Uh,
compete with like other people?
To apply, you have to qualify.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so there's like the first round of applications where you submit like a sample of your writing and like a personal statement and your resume and letters of rec. And then if they're still interested, well, this is just for the creative writing program, because I assume that's what anyone on this call would be interested in. For
Right.
the different departments, I'm sure it's different, like drama has auditions, whatever. So after in creative writing, after you get past that initial round of applications, if they like your application enough to continue considering you for a spot in the graduating class, they do an interview in person or on Zoom. Mine was on Zoom. I'm not sure if they're in person now. I would have to ask about that. And through those interviews, they narrow it down even more to a class of about 15 admitted people who are starting in the school that August. And the chair of our department said that we get about 60 to 80 creative writing applications every year. So it's an acceptance rate of like about 20%. And I've met some very impressive people within my department here, probably because of that.
Yeah. It's a very good school.
It sounds good too.
Yeah. All right.
Good
Thank
night.
you all.
Thank you
I'm
so
gonna hit-
much. Good night.